Hello again, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Reiner, and thank you for listening in to a brand new episode of Deeply Rooted.
Deeply rooted in God's Word. Deeply rooted in God's Word.
Hey there, and welcome again to another episode of Deeply Rooted. We're excited that you could be with us for episode number 56. Crazy to think that we've made it that far, but here we are. We've got some really good content for you today. I'm really excited about this interview, two lifelong friends of mine. And we've got a special topic that we want to discuss with you. But before we get into that, don't forget, make sure that you go on over and follow us on Facebook at Deeply Rooted, as well as checking us out on our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and leave us a comment there. And if you want a little more content, if you're into the traditional podcast scene, you can check us out on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, however you want to phrase that today. You can find us there as well, and going over, if you're really excited about the content and getting into our website, that's jeremiahreiner.com. You'll find all of our archived episodes on there, as well as our blog post and our upcoming ministry schedule. So if you want to get involved with us, we'd really appreciate that. Check us out wherever we may be in the area ministering. We'd love to fellowship with you and excited about that. So let's go ahead and dive right into it today. I'm really honored to be with Terry and Debbie Kilgore. These are lifelong residents of Scott County, Virginia. They've served our community for a long time. Debbie is a family and consumer science teacher, a co-worker now at Gay City High School. She's taught and mentored countless teenagers, including yours truly, and made a lifelong impact on a lot of kids and countless lives in this area. Terry is a member of the Virginia House of Delegates. He's a representative of our 1st Legislative District. He's been serving since, I believe, 1993.
That's right.
So a little while. So that's Scott Lee, part of Wise, the city of Norton. Terry serves as chairman of the House of Commerce. He's also the member of the Labor Committee and member of the House Courts of Justice Committee and House Rules Committee. He also practices law here in Gate City, serves on a number of different boards and organizations in Southwest Virginia. Terry and Debbie are also proud parents of 2 children, good friends of mine, Kayla and Kyle. And they are also faithful members of Smith's Chapel United Methodist Church. So that might take the cake for longest intro that I've ever
Oh, wow.
That's a good thing. So all the credentials. So thank you all for being on with us today.
Well, thanks for having us.
I'm going to dive right in. The topic that I want to talk to you guys about, and I know a lot of people probably listening to this think, oh, we're going to have a political conversation, but that's not what we're here for. Deeply Rooted is a strictly ministry-based podcast, so we want to jump into that. And you guys are in a unique position in your careers, and a lot of people that may run a business, operate in the public sphere, a lot of pressure comes with that, living out faith in a public world. Certainly social media and mass media now has cranked that up times 10. So people are out in public, we're seen, sometimes our successes get downplayed, our failures get certainly spotlighted. And I want to shed some light on that. We got a lot of ministers that listen to this, and I'm sure will benefit from this conversation. So let's go way back, though, and get a little base for everybody. I'm going to start with Debbie, so ladies first. Why don't you explain real quick your background as far as your conversion and how you kind of came to faith in Christ?
Okay, so I grew up going to a little church in Rye Cove called Rick's Chapel. My mama is 91 and she's still a member there. But I actually, going to a Bible school at Kaler's Chapel the summer before my 7th grade, that's what impacted me to ask the Lord to come into my life. And I actually got saved in my bedroom. I prayed with my mom when I got home one night from Bible school. So Bible school has always been special to me because of that. So I was 12 when I got saved.
How about you, Terry?
Long time ago.
Well, I mean, it was, interesting for me. I grew up in Manville area, Smith's Chapel. Went to church there all my life, but actually got saved over at Alley's Chapel above Manville School at a revival that was going on there, where the youth when I was about 10 or 11 years old, and they had a big youth group back then, and a lot of us would go and sit there on the back row, and 2 or 3 of us came forward that night, and that's how that happened. Grew up in church, and of course, there at the family is going to Smith Chapel.
I think all great people came from Manville. I just want to throw that out there, including me. Moving along, I guess, in the timeline, obviously you guys married now. How did that all come about? Like, did you guys meet high school or college or, in this county?
Shall I tell the story?
Yeah, you tell the story, Debbie.
So, back to Smith's Chapel, I have an aunt and uncle that still live close to us on Manville Road that Terry grew up knowing, and I would spend the night sometimes with my aunt when when my uncle's working shift work, and I would go to Smith's with her to church. And then sometimes his mom and dad and my aunt and uncle, when we were like early teenagers, they'd come over to Riggs's. They sang in a quartet back then, his mom and dad, my aunt and uncle. And he'd come, and he'd sit with me, just no big deal. And so when he was a junior and I was a freshman, he asked me to his junior prom at Gate City. And I wasn't allowed to date yet, but Mom and Dad probably would have said yes because they did know him from church.
Sure.
But I had something at Rock Cove. I went to Rock Cove High School. So I had something the same night at our school, so I had to turn him down. So then a few months later, he asked me to his athletic picnic at Gate City. And again, I had something at my school the same day, and I had to turn him down.
Strike two.
So strike two. And again, it wasn't any big romance. I was just a girl he knew, that kind of deal. So we went our separate ways for 6 years, and I was going to be a senior in college at ETSU, and he was starting his second year in law school at William & Mary, and he came home that summer, and he asked me out, and we started dating, and we dated 3 years, and then we got married.
So were you guys graduated after you got married, or was this something
Yeah,
happened in
I was.
college?
No, I graduated from law school. We got married in 1986 and 87. I mean, gosh, I graduated in 86. We got married in 87.
Right.
And
I was teaching school.
She was
I taught
teaching school up at St. Paul.
Yeah.
So was education and law something you guys had already known? So when you were dating, this is something you were aware of?
Oh, yeah. I was already set to be. I was going to be a senior in college.
So plans were set. I mean, everybody kind of knew.
Yeah.
And Jerry and I were in law school up at William & Mary together. So plans were already set there. So
was it hard having long distance relationship?
Well, back then, and I always laugh and tell my students when we talk about that kind of thing, there was no internet.
Right.
You didn't text. So we mailed a lot of letters to each other, and, long distance phone calls were expensive. So
we talked twice a week. I think Wednesday and Saturday or something.
Yeah.
Because it was like $3 to $5, just to call somebody during that time.
And 2 of the 3 years we dated was long distance because he was in law school the last 2 years. 2 of the 3 years we dated. So
now it seems like something that both your families were all in favor of. Everybody blessed that. Is that pretty much how you remember that? Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
So everybody was on board, the whole way. So now was Gate City always the plan to move back to?
Yeah, that was my plan. Of course, I mean, when I was in law school, of course, we were recruited, and I was recruited by to go other places. Jerry was recruited, and Jerry actually went to Roanoke to be in the U.S. Attorney's office for a while. But I just decided I was going to come back here and try to practice law and try to make my way here. Right. And bought this little building while I was in law school that we're sitting in today.
And just for clarification for those listening, Jerry, your twin brother.
Yeah, Jerry's
so you guys had a very similar path, growing up. Sure.
Right.
All right, I want to shift gears a little bit because coming out of law school, I want to talk a little bit about, the idea of you getting into public service. Mm-hmm. When did that really start to enter your mind and you started having conversations with people and thinking, this is something I'd like to pursue? Well,
after I got back from law school, a lot of folks came to me and asked me, hey, would you be interested in running for a Commonwealth attorney? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, maybe so. And we talked about it and actually, wondered if that was a good move or so I decided to do it. Of course, I had to run against an incumbent, and so that it was going to take a lot of work. And Debbie, I think, bought into that.
Well, he did. He ran for Commonwealth attorney this summer. Like, we got married in June.
Yeah.
So I married him with him being involved in his first political race.
Right in the middle,
Right in the middle of it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and that worked out. That worked out pretty good, and I was happy there actually being the Commonwealth attorney. And then this guy from Richmond called and said, "Hey, I want to come down and meet." And I was like, so I put the guy off for a while. Of course, I didn't think I want to go to the House of Delegates. That's all the way in Richmond. So anyway, I had gone out of town somewhere with some folks, and he and his wife had met Debbie and was talking to her.
Who previously I was pregnant with Kyle.
Yeah.
We already had Kayla,
yeah.
and I was really not on board with him running for House of Delegates because,
we had two little.
Sure.
We don't have two little kids.
But by the time the gentleman, that's what he's fixing to say, by the time the guy left our house, he had me talked into it because it was
Not me, but Debbie.
because it was kind of one of those things. If somebody has to do it. And that is the thing about public service. If we all said, no, it's not convenient for us, or no, it's not the right time, somebody has to step up and do it. And so it was kind of like a God and country type speech he gave to, or a conversation we had. And so by the time he left, if Terry was willing to do it, I was willing to support him doing it. So.
He knew who he had to sell.
Yeah.
he sold her.
And
right.
He
Great
sold.
salesman.
I tell you, and the key point there, I think, was if good people do not step up,
right,
then what are we left with? And that was the pitch that was made, and that's so true about no matter what profession you're in. Good folks have to step up and do that vocation, whatever it is.
Now, was family and friends, church members, was everybody kind of behind that, or was there's a little hesitation?
I think so.
I think so. I mean, there was some hesitation, from me, because I thought, oh my gosh, I've stuck my head out here. Now I may not, this may not be what the plan is. This may not be God's plan for me to do this. And you're taking a big risk there, putting a lot on the line. But my family, especially my twin brother, was very, very supportive.
And of course, the risk was Commonwealth attorney was a full-time position.
Right.
And what most people don't always realize that General Assembly jobs are a part-time position. They're not really part-time, but they're part-time pay. And so that was also a risk, because he was going to be going from whatever the Commonwealth attorney made at that time,
about 80 or 90,000 back to 16,000.
Yeah.
Plus practicing law. But so that was a risk because he had just gotten reelected for, or I guess your second term in your second year, second term. So it was a big deal, but everybody was excited about it. And when he got elected, we had a whole crew that drove up to Richmond for the swearing-in ceremony, and so.
Do you think that now, like when you all look back on that, and after all these years, because this is 1993 we're talking about, so here we are in 2020. Do you look at that now as a calling from God after all that time?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I couldn't have made it without God. I mean, you couldn't make it without that provision. You couldn't make it without the many prayers that you have throughout. From not just your prayers, but prayers from people about what's going on in the General Assembly, what's going on in the nation. I mean, it's a lot of prayers.
Yeah, I mean you're overseeing people in a service capacity, and God's holding people accountable.
Each one of us in Virginia, there's 100 legislators like me. We have 87,000 people that we represent up there. And the worst thing about it is, I mean, when you go up into Northern Virginia and Tidewater, people representing 4 square miles, 5 square miles, and I'm 2 hours. I'm 2 hours in the end. And if you start up at Bristol and go to Cumberland Gap or Pound. Yeah.
All the way through Wise, yeah.
All the way through Wise, yeah. And I represent most of Wise. I have, now I've got almost all of Wise except St. Paul and Coburn.
Yeah.
So it's
a wide range. Yeah.
Wide range area.
Now, you guys alluded to this just a second ago. You were talking about, at the same time that you're getting into this and making this big career transition and moving, here we go with family time, and you got 2 kids coming along, and not just 2 kids, but 2 young kids, and so there's a lot on your plate. Debbie's teaching, you're involved in law, and then serving, and so you guys are burning it at both ends at that point. And I think about that, and this is why I wanted to ask this question, because a lot of times in ministry, and I hear this a lot from people, and I've even been there myself, but like there is a sense of burnout at certain points. Like people get to a limit. You know, we all have a certain capacity, some more than others, but there's a capacity. And when you begin to weigh that, you know, like young children, career, and you start understanding, hey, my first ministry is at home. We get that. We know that. My wife, kids. Was there ever a time that you just thought, I got to get out of this? Or was it, you know, hey, we have to do this?
Well, no, I've thought about that numerous times. I mean, especially as the kids got more and more involved in sports, more and more involved in things that I wanted to be there for. And I couldn't have done it without Debbie stepping up and doing this. But knock on wood, I think I only missed one football game of Kyle's and a couple, maybe 2 tennis matches of Kayla's when I was actually, and that's college and high school. I think I missed 2 of her tennis matches.
Yeah.
And I remember one time she was in Lynchburg. I left Richmond. We were voting. I looked at the schedule. I said, okay, I can make it to Lynchburg, which was 2.5 hours. And they said we had to be back in 5 hours. I barely made it in to vote. So I made it to Lynchburg that day. But, you know, there are numerous times I thought about just walking away and, you know, saying, hey, you know, there's you know, but I felt that, you know, I felt, man, you can't do this because, you know, for Southwest Virginia, but.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, same thing. I mean, there's been times when it seemed like there was always something tearing up when he was in session. It wouldn't be tearing up, when you know, and I'm sure he's probably called home more than one time when I was frustrated or in tears over something not working right. But we were blessed, you know, we live a mile from his mom and dad and 9 miles from my parents. So when the kid, you know, I always had somebody, either of our dads or our moms or whatever, to rely on if I needed help or when he was in session. So, you know, that's a blessing. I don't know how people do it who don't have extended family, you know. And I think it's made our kids, you know, even closer to their grandparents because, you know, if I had to do something with him or whatever, or if I had something for there's been a few times over the years when I was really involved in FCCLA and traveling with state national officers. That would be my biggest concern. Was most of the time it didn't conflict, but every once in a while I'd have a state meeting like somewhere in Virginia while he was in session, you know, and that's when I really depended on, you know, either or both sets of grandparents to help, you know, with Kayla and Kyle when they were little. But besides that, that's been the only, you know, but yeah, there's been times when, like you said, that I've thought, okay, he's done this long enough, but I still go back to somebody has to do it. I'm not saying he's the only person that can do it. And when I think God will, and that may be getting one of your questions, but God will let us know when it's the right time.
Did you ever contemplate stepping away from teaching and just staying at home?
Due to his career or just in general?
In general.
No. And again, you know, when I decided to move back because I taught in St. Paul before we got married, and one of the reasons I accepted the position at Gate City was because I knew we were going to get married, and you know, we would live somewhere in the Gate City area. Of course, that's been a blessing. I'm so thankful I did that, not just for the proximity, but being a part of this community 35 years has been, you know, really special to me too. But no, because if, you know, in education, if you leave, you know, you don't necessarily get guaranteed to be back at the same school.
Right.
So if I had taken a year off or two, whatever, I came to Gate City and kind of built a program that had been closed. So that was very personal to me. And so if I had taken time off, I would not have been guaranteed to be back at that same school. And I lived 3 miles from the school, so in addition to caring about the program that I developed, you know, also the proximity meant a lot. My kids rode to school with me. They went to Shoemaker. They'd ride the bus over from Shoemaker to the high school in the afternoon. So, you know, all those things just made it advantageous to keep teaching. And like I said, if I had an after-school, you know, project or something, you know, I had a grandparent that could step up and watch the kids for a couple of hours or whatever. So, so overall, no. And I've asked my kids that before. Did they regret that I didn't stay home? And I asked that to Kyle not too many years ago when I was contemplating that, and he looked at me. He goes, "Well, I mean, Mom, you've had an impact with other people's lives," and that made me feel good. You know that's what I was. I wasn't hoping he'd say that, but that was reassuring that they didn't regret that I was at school when they were at school.
Yeah, it reaffirmed the decision.
It did, yeah.
That you did the right thing.
I really never doubted that.
I've heard it said before that leadership's a lonely place, and I would probably have to agree with that, just in little experience myself and seeing other people. It's not for everybody to get out front. I don't think that's a calling for everybody. That is not a knock on anybody that's not. I do think the Lord knows our frame. I think the Bible teaches to that. But in a public life like that, when you do step out, it's very demanding. You can read through the scriptures and you see people's lives and you think, my goodness, just in my little small world compared to what they went through, and somehow they came out on the other end. And we just look at that and we think, by the grace of God,
Absolutely.
there they go. It's a lot of scrutiny. It's busy schedules like you all talked about. A lot of people wanting to talk and your attention and every topic that is or is not relevant. And in the middle of all that, you've still got to balance marriage and your parenting and your personal relationship with the Lord. And so, I ask this question a lot to ministers, but and Terry, I'll start with you. Like, how do you manage to balance that?
Oh, my schedule is just unbelievable. I mean, as far as just jam packed every day, but I mean, you just have to. Every morning, I try to think about what's important, what's not important, what can wait, what can't wait. Try to go through that each day, and try to go through it in my head. And try to delegate as much as I can. You try to get good people around you and try to say, okay, do this, you do that, and you got to do that, because I think Abraham Lincoln, I read the book on Abraham Lincoln on leadership, and he was very much into delegation, because you can't, if you try to do it all, you're just going to fail.
Yeah.
And I rely on a lot of folks. A lot of my colleagues that are in this area, we'll divide up on how to do things, divide up things to do, so that, all of us don't have to go down the same road reading this or reading that, and that's been very helpful. But, just talking about life in general, today's world's tough. And it's tough and it's a lot tougher than when I got in '93, because of all the social media.
Absolutely.
And especially if you are a professing Christian, it gets really tough, because now that's not the cool thing to be anywhere, because you're judging, you're being judgmental. You're when I vote for. Life issues, for example. I mean, I'm going across and going through people protesting, hollering at you the whole time. Men, you're this and that, and it's just you just got to be strong and keep going.
What about you, Debbie?
I think, I was just listening to what he was saying. I remember when he first got elected and we talked about it. I remember saying, whatever you do, don't change who you are. Don't change your faith. Don't change your beliefs for anybody. Don't. And he hasn't. So I know you're asking more about me, but, whatever your core beliefs are, stick to them. And I think that's kind of how we kind of have that same philosophy we always have had.
Yeah.
We're a team. We kind of tag team. We still do that. Even our kids are adults. We still, I feel like, tag team either with our parents or our kids or whatever, helping them out or doing whatever we can do. I mean, I think it's a team effort.
And the values that we grew up with here.
I was going to say
that's very important.
We both grew up. I've said this many times, in very parallel childhoods. In that. His mom did work outside the home. Mine did before she had kids, and then she stayed at home till she started subbing when I was in high school, so she worked outside the home. But both her dads worked in industrial plants, Eastman and Holston Defense, but both farmed on the side in addition to their full-time jobs. So consequently, we grew up, raising tobacco, working on the farm, having cows, all the whole thing. So I think that was easy for us to understand each other, because we grew up, our parents taking us to church.
Sure.
We look back at how blessed we were that we had all that. But I think that instilled in us a great work ethic. I think we both have always had that, so I feel very thankful. I think I digress from your question, but I don't know. I think the key thing is just be the person you are all the time. You don't need to be fake to anybody.
Yeah.
Just be you. And I think people want to see you be genuine. And I hope I am. I hope that's what I'm seen as, because I don't have any other person to be. So,
Right.
and that's by the grace of God, though. That God, if the Holy Spirit's living in you, you fail daily, but the Holy Spirit's still there to guide you. And that's been my core thing for all my adult life. And I don't know how people, I've said that many times, I don't know how people go through life and go through some of the things they go through without Christ. I can't comprehend it, really.
What do you think, if you had to put your finger on the pulse of it, just one particular, what do you think the hardest part of being a Christian in such a public sphere is?
I think the hardest part is sometimes getting your feelings hurt, sometimes getting criticized. Criticism is hard. You don't know how hard it is to sit there. You're getting criticized and you're getting lambasted all over Facebook or Twitter about some decisions you made, and you made that decision because you thought it was the right decision. Of course, people are going to disagree with it,
Sure.
But I've got this rule. I've just got this rule that I just don't respond. Just do not respond. Or if you're going to respond, if you're thinking about responding, wait 24 hours, because you're not going to be as upset about it. And hopefully that shows some grace on my part, because I don't need to be on there at late at night going after somebody, because that's not, while that might help me politically, is that going to help me personally? Is that going to what am I leaving? What role model am I playing? So I just got that. I just have that rule anymore. It just because in this day and time, everyone gets offended about everything pretty quick, and I'm just trying to do what's best for Southwest Virginia. And that's what I decided a long time ago. My political party is while I'm on one, but my political party is Southwest Virginia. I got to do what's best for Southwest Virginia. If that goes against my party, if that goes against, that's what you got to do. You got to do what's best.
Well, I think that's a biblical principle.
Yeah.
Patience and making sure that you're self-controlled are both fruits of the Spirit. And I think that's a good qualities you mentioned there, like just kind of holding off on things and siding on grace a little bit, because we're all quick triggered in some capacity, and it's easy to sit there and want to take pot shots back at everybody and their brother, and everybody in any position whatsoever has wanted that, whether it be education or law or delegating. But
and as a spouse, it's you always hear it hurts worse to you'd rather somebody say something to you than about somebody you loved. That's very true. When you know that person, whatever's being said is not true. That's hard, and so social media, because I do think people say things that they would not say to your face on social media, because it's just a safe place for them. And so he's right, though. Sometimes I've probably even been one to say, well, you should defend yourself, and his calmness about it and his patience about it, because I tend to wear my emotions on my sleeves more than he does, and that's just me, and so I respect and appreciate the fact that he can step back and be as calm as he is when somebody's falsely saying something about him that hurts.
Sure. Yeah.
So, especially when he's trying to do the right thing. So, it is what it is. But
how do you all guard your character and your reputation? Because obviously both of you, Debbie and I know this in education. You're around people literally from the moment you walk in the door till you leave. And Lord knows if you go to the grocery store or a Walmart or something like that, and then when you're in church, and then, with your position in law and then delegating, it's rare to be away from a larger group outside of your family.
You just got to be very, the way I look at it, wherever I go, some people's filming you. That's the way. That's the way it is this day and time. So you can't you can't drive as reckless. There's a lot of things you can't do, but I mean it's just you just gotta. I mean, I think as long as you have that relationship with Christ, you're going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
You're going to have that. You're not going to go where you're not supposed to be. You're not going to be hanging around people you're not supposed to be hanging around.
Right.
And
It's not really that hard.
it's not really
I mean,
that hard, but people. And that's what we were talking about earlier. People are going to say what they want to say anyway, and so that's the way I look at it. And just try to be yourself and try to do what you believe is right and go on.
As ambassadors for Christ, we really don't have another choice.
Right.
I mean, we are ambassadors for the Lord, and like you said, where you go, who you're around, this is not a reflection of just me, but of who I stand for, who I believe in, where my faith lies. And so, like you said, you're constantly people having cameras, quoting, misquoting, tweeting, retweeting, posting. And so some people may say, and I've heard this a lot from other people, that, they're being fake, that's a put on, all this kind of stuff. But I think what it really shows is just more self-control.
Yeah.
That's true.
That you won't cave into this perception that you need to be some type of politician, some type of educator.
Right.
I think the Bible calls us to a specific Christianity.
Yeah.
Not just a random version that we appreciate that's culturally appropriate wherever we may be at. Christ fits all culture.
Yes.
Because he supersedes them.
Yes.
Right.
We don't get, on their level, we get on his level. And I appreciate you guys saying that because you're right. Like, I don't think people understand. It's rare for you all to go out. And obviously, you're not the only ones in this area. Many people fight the same. It's rare to go out in public and not constantly be watched.
Oh, I know.
And it's almost in our day and time, and I think you guys can agree with this, it's as if people now are looking for failure.
Oh, they
That's
are.
true.
And
It's not they want to see you succeed. It's almost as if they want to see you fail to see what happens.
Some of the biggest news stories is when some of our Christian pastors, some of our folks that we have looked up to fail because that's what the media push, because they say, oh yeah, you see there, this is what happens.
Well, I mean, bad news always sells.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's why in any news broadcast, the very last minute they'll have one good news story.
Right.
Which is nice, but there's a lot of good news stories out there that we don't hear about. So bad news sells, and so that's why sensationalism sells.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, the number of articles probably written about your character versus the number of articles written about decisions that somebody didn't agree with, or people that you may have been in cahoots with at certain times that you've had to be around, are probably 10 to 1. Compared, but kind of moving along a little bit and going with this, because we've touched on some things I definitely wanted to hit on, especially social media and different things. But I would ask y'all this. What do you think the pendulum has swung to in your all's careers? Because you mentioned, you started out even dating. There was no social media. There was no internet. There was nothing like that. Can you say that there's been pros or cons, or would you really lean heavily more towards the negative of it?
Oh, I mean, there's pros right now with social media. There's pros. You can get information. I mean, just think how fast you can get information right now. But the problem we have in this country, I think the problem we have in society as a whole, we got a 24-hour news stations, and they have to sensationalize something to get people to watch their news story. And you got it. And I'm talking about both sides here.
Sure.
They both, they exaggerate what's happened and look for differences when we should be looking on how we can come together. When I first got to Richmond, that's the way we worked. We worked on coming together, trying to reach an agreement, trying to get across that divide. That's not happening now. Everybody's gone to their corners and just throwing bombs back and forth.
Do you think it's social media?
I think it's social media. I think it's just the on both sides, the extremes control both sides right now.
I think the media in general, not just social media, the media in general. And again, it's because that's what sells.
Yeah, it's what sells. I mean, it's just.
I think the average American watches whichever news station they watch and get all riled up. And I do think Americans have way. I know it's not supposed to be a political question, but
that's fine.
have more in common than we do not.
Oh, I agree.
I still believe that.
I agree totally. You can find good people anywhere in
Everywhere.
this nation that you go to. Good Christian people anywhere you go to. And sometimes we forget that. And sometimes we also forget, and this is something that, I've really evolved on, because when I first went to General Assembly, I was locking everybody up. I wanted to vote to be tough on crime. But, do we really need to be putting people in jail just because we're mad at them? We need to put the violent people in. We need to help those who are addicted. We need to help those individuals because they got a sickness that we got to help. And that's where I've changed it. And the reason I changed it, I was listening to something, and that's somebody's child. Okay, that was somebody's little boy. That was somebody's little girl.
Yeah.
And that's how you got to look at it now. And quit judging folks from afar. We do that, and we do that as Christians.
Sure.
Yes.
And that's we shouldn't be in that situation. Yeah. We're like the we're not like the Good Samaritan. Sometimes we're like the other folks who are walking around.
Yeah.
you know.
You mentioned attacking faith and stuff. Have you all ever personally had, and you don't have to go into an explanation about it or throw names out, but have you ever personally been attacked for your faith?
Oh, yeah.
In your line of work?
I'm sure he has probably more than I have. Not in my line of work.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just the way that happens, because if you're a Christian and you vote what you consider Christian values, you're going to be attacked anywhere in the political realm. And I do not believe whether you're Christian or you shouldn't attack somebody for their religious beliefs. I'm a strong believer in that.
Yeah. I see, that from afar sometimes. I follow you on social media because I appreciate the fact that you're constantly putting things out there, information that I like to know. I like to know immediately what's going on. But you can't help immediately. There's that comment section. And
scrolling down.
Yeah.
Like, oh.
And I've had to learn, I think, I know that man personally.
Yeah.
I don't need to look at those.
Yeah.
That's not going to do me any good. That's not going to do my conscience any good. That's not why I got on here.
Right.
I didn't want to see someone's opinion of Terry. I just wanted to know some information that he's imparting to us here in Southwest Virginia. And certainly I've even seen on there the faith attack. And it's, again, even growing up, obviously younger than you all, even I can remember a time where you just didn't see things like that take place.
True.
That was a private conversation. And 9 times out of 10, it never had to do with your faith. It was just a disagreement about something.
And the problem I have with it, you'll say a lot more behind that keyboard than you would say to someone's face.
Yes.
And if people would get back, if you've got a beef with somebody or you got an issue, talk to them about it.
Right.
I think if you talk to them about it, you'll probably understand where they're coming from. You understand, and you can reach some happy medium. But just being able to type on Twitter or 64 words, that's where society's gone to.
And I think that's the biblical model. I think that's presented obviously by Christ. Yes. I mean, certainly no technology like we talk about, but I have no problem saying that the Lord would absolutely confront face to face. And the reason I say that is because he still does.
Right, absolutely.
He's not going to hide behind something to get his point across, but he's also not going to, as you mentioned, just lambast somebody. No. Publicly to make an example out of somebody or for just some cheap personal gain.
Yeah, and a lot of folks ask me why I didn't attack certain political individuals when stuff comes out about them. I don't think that's my role to be doing that of the other party. I mean, when somebody's down like that, I don't think we should be piling on.
Sure.
Right.
I don't think that's the way.
That's where grace and mercy should keep you, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd like to have that grace and mercy shown to you.
I would love to have that, but, not expecting it.
Well, I tell people all the time, the Lord commands forgiveness. He doesn't suggest it.
No, exactly.
Absolutely.
And sometimes I suggest it, and
Yeah.
that's where I get out of line. But I'm commanded to forgive people, even
Right.
people that are difficult. Because bottom line, I'm difficult sometimes.
Yeah, we have this
The Lord,
conversation
you know.
even with Kyle or Kay. How in the world can you talk to that guy after what they, how they treated you? And you go, well,
Yeah, growing up, there'd be times, when
you've got to do that. You've
Sure.
got to go back
they were
and
being loyal to their dad, and they didn't want to,
Yeah.
But that's a life lesson you're teaching.
that's a life lesson.
You know.
You gotta teach it lessons because there's sometimes you got to cross back over bridges you don't want to cross over.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, and that'll lead to our next question here. If you had to just pick one, I'll start with you, Debbie. What's the single greatest lesson as a Christian that you've learned in dealing with public resentment or failure? When things are negative, whether it be maybe about Terry or your kids or you personally, what's the one big thing as a Christian you thought, I'm glad I learned that to overcome?
I'm not sure I'm answering the way what you're getting at, but I say this a lot. Terry says that here's say this a lot, like in church or with each other or with our family. We on a daily basis, and all this we're talking about applies to this, are involved in spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Every single day. We may not every day consciously think about it, but so I just try to remind myself when something's negative being said. Especially if you're standing up for what you believe in and what you believe that you represent in your area. What most people believe in. I'll just say, like abortion. If you're standing up for, if you believe in standing up for life, you're going to be hit and you're going to be attacked.
Sure.
And it's not a popular thing, even in our area. I've learned to say that because people always look at you as though you're judging others. You're you're not showing love. But to me, you are showing love because you're saying that life is important. So, as an example of that, Satan doesn't want me to say that.
Right.
He would rather me just be quiet. And in turn, in the same token, when Terry was talking about people saying, why didn't you confront so and so? Well, Satan would like to see him confront somebody and step on them when they're down, because that's not showing God's love.
Right.
So I don't know if I answered your question exactly, except that I just try to be aware of that when somebody's trying to attack or trying to, just be true to yourself, be true to what you believe that God wants you to do. And that doesn't mean I don't cry sometimes and get my feelings hurt or, because you're human.
Yeah.
But,
And
and I'll tell you, you win and lose in this life, and I always think about the book of Job. I always think about that. Job, look what happened to Job. If what all happened to Job, that's not happened to me.
Right.
He lost it all, lost his family, got sick. All kinds of issues happened to Job, and what happened in the end? He won.
Yeah.
By focusing on God. So that's what we just gotta focus on that this too shall pass.
he says that a lot.
I say this too shall pass.
He has to remind me of that sometimes.
And then I sometimes tell Kyle the 100-year rule. Kyle, if somebody's not going to be talking about it 100 years from now, it's not enough to worry about. Just calm down.
And I tell my students not, because obviously in the public classroom I don't talk about spiritual life, but I talk to them about, and I probably said this to you when you're in high school, that you're leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
Good or bad. And I tell my students just today, we were talking about something, and I said, there's always somebody watching how you handle situations, how you treat other people, that kind of thing. We're talking about character. But on the flip side of that, while we are leaving a legacy, then there's a song called I Don't Want to Leave a Legacy. It's by, I think the name of the group now.
Casting Crowns.
Casting Crowns, thank you. And that puts it in a different perspective because it's saying not your personal legacy, but your legacy that points to Christ. Mm-hmm. And that's really all I care about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the big picture in life.
Sure.
Now, humanly on a daily basis, I may not consciously 24 hours a day think about that. But ultimately, it's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that'll kind of lead in a little bit here to this last question. We'll close it out on this one. What are you most proud about so far in your service? And I'll let either one of you go first.
Well, I'll get emotional because I probably haven't cried yet because I used to cry easily. I am most proud, having taught high school all these years, for people like you. And I knew I'd cry, but to form friendships with former students, like with somebody like you, means the world to me. And I have so many former students that I've watched grow up and have their own families, their own careers, and I'm just so proud of them. And I call them my babies. I only have really 2 babies that are mine, Kayla and Kyle, but I consider all of you all my babies too. And so that's been my most joyous part of teaching, is sharing in what my former students have grown up to be and who they are. And for a lot of them, still staying in contact with them. Mm-hmm. Not all of them, but for a good part of them. You know, even that's one good thing about social media. That's probably the reason I even got on Facebook to begin with, was to stay up with former students. So that's, doing this with you, it's just so special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know how I feel about you, so.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a tough one, and you know, you talk about, you know, people want to say, oh, all these accolades you get, you know, legislator of the year, is that, none of that's really important, you know. That is, I mean, it's, you know, it's important, but it's not really that important. You know, Chuck Colson, who did a prison ministry, you know, he was involved in Watergate and got convicted, and he did you know, he basically, you know, and this is something, you know, this is going to sound weird, but it really doesn't matter who the president is. It really doesn't matter who we elect to Congress, who we elect to U.S. Senator. And what matters is how we treat individuals on a daily basis and how we show our love for each other. That's what really matters. And if everybody who professes to be a Christian treated people with love, this world would be a great place to live in. We wouldn't have to have a lot of this stuff that we wouldn't be talking about a lot of these issues that we talk about right now. There wouldn't be homeless issues. There wouldn't be problems if you know, and you know, I know it's tough, and that's probably oversimplifying things, but you know, that's what we ought to talk about when we're talking about leaving legacies. We ought to talk about, you know, being nice to people.
Kindness goes on.
Kindness. I mean, that Tim McGraw song, "Always Be Humble and Kind." That's great.
Yeah.
If I could teach, if any young people, that's what y'all that teach young people: be humble and kind.
I just referred to that song today in class. How funny
Yeah.
you should say that.
Yeah.
So yeah, legacy, being kind. I say every semester. I'm sure I said this when I had you, Jeremiah. Golden rule: if everybody just followed it, how simple this world would be.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, life is not that complicated. We make it complicated.
Yeah.
And, you know, in your all sphere, like we've talked about publicly, it's a little more difficult sometimes. And, you know, you deal with that. So, you know, the thing I think about when I asked that question, you know, what are you most proud of? You know, I would wish people that knew public individuals would think more along those lines, that they're not just some face or an identity or a brand. You know, like when somebody asks me about Debbie Kilgore, like, I don't even think coworker. I think the lady that gave me a graduation present, that, and you don't even know this, but like, it was a book, and I've used that multiple times in sermons.
Have you really?
So like, you know, I think, hey, I have no idea who's had that ministered to them by a lady. They'll probably never know, but to me, she means a big deal, and she didn't have to give me that, and she didn't give me a random book. It was a spiritual book.
Yeah.
You know, some teachers would get ran off for that, but here's somebody that's like, hey, it's not an idea. I am a Christian. This is who I am. I just happen to be a teacher. You know, when I think Terry Kilgore, I don't think delegate. I think the guy that he and I worked on a house together in New Orleans. And we were terrible carpenters.
We were.
We put studs in a wall together. Somebody's living there now.
I know, that's great.
You know, and they'll never know us.
No.
And that's okay. Like, we didn't put our name on that. We didn't want to. You know, like, that's what I wish more people would understand. Here's a soul that matters to Christ, and they're more than just some career. They're more than just some brand. They're more than a face on social media. They're living, breathing people that matter to God. And yeah, we may disagree a few times, but ultimately there's one head of the church, there's one king at the table, it's not me, it's not y'all, it's not anybody listening to this, you know, it's the Lord, and that's what brings us together. And so I appreciate y'all being a part of this today. I had a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know,
This
we
is
had a really
great. It
good
went
time.
by fast.
It did, yeah. Time
Yeah.
flies when you're having fun. So.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I will close out real quick. Just remember, follow us on Facebook and check us out where we'll be posting these things and so much more there at Deeply Rooted. Again, check us out on our YouTube channel. If you haven't looked at it, we got a ton of interviews and teachings on there so you can catch up. This will be 56, so you got 55 more to look at if you haven't done that already. And if you want to, dive on in as well to Apple Podcasts. You can check us out there as well at Deeply Rooted again. So if you want to email us, you can reach us out and email any questions you might have, prayer requests. That's drigw18@gmail.com. Again, that's drigw18@gmail.com. So until next time, we love you guys. God bless and hope you have a great week in Christ.
Deeply rooted in God's word. Deeply rooted in God.